President Obama recently signed the financial reform bill into law. While a lot of the bill focuses on how Wall Street is regulated, there are some sections of the bill that will impact our everyday lives. Gary Opper, CPA and managing member of Levie-Opper LLC, is here to help us understand this revolutionary piece of legislation, and that's what it's being called, right, Gary?
In some places,
depending.
Yes. Some places it's revolutionary, in some places it's a criminal act.
Yeah, but nonetheless, we got to deal with it.
Depending on whose side you're on.
Yeah. So what's the name of this bill?
That's a good question. It's the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. It was signed by President Obama, as you said, on July 21st of 2010.
And it's a huge, I mean, you've
huge
brought the
act.
legislation, and you're missing some there, you were saying.
I am. I took the parts out that I wanted to read first, but it's 848 pages, and it's front and back, and of course, as you mentioned, it's small print.
Small print.
And we also noticed that it's 10 pages just of table of contents.
Incredible.
So
there's a lot to go through.
Yes,
so we
and
should
I may have to cheat part of the way through and you look at my notes.
But there is a lot of this that will affect consumers, and that's the important part
Yes.
here. So let's start by how this law will affect consumers. And I mean, I've read some parts of just articles, and there's going to be a difference in credit cards, loans. Tell me about that aspect of the bill.
A lot of the bill, and again, the bill is tremendous, and some of the things that you talked about I hadn't even saw. So it's just, you know, it just is a massive, massive bill. The main areas are, it talks about credit card reform, it talks about mortgage reform, and investment reform. Some of the things that the average consumer, it should help, is that it's supposed to streamline the mortgage process. You know, there'll be less paperwork, so that remains to be seen, but that's their attempt. It will prevent the hiking of interest rates on existing credit card balances. It also should provide for plain language disclosures on all financial instruments. Also, in the mutual fund industry, it'll provide for disclosures prior to buying the mutual funds as opposed to after buying the mutual funds. So the theme of this, and again, and we talked about airlines and whatever, the theme of the whole bill in terms of how it helps the consumer is that it's going to stop abuses, make things more transparent, and make the economy run better. Now,
getting back to the credit card charges that you were saying, the interest rate, I mean, that is a big deal for many people, where the prices would just go up and you'd have no control over it. So this would regulate those interest rates?
It doesn't necessarily regulate the interest rates, but it'll regulate how they can change them.
Okay,
you know?
There's got to be certain
right.
parameters.
Yes. I mean, for instance, we talked about in mortgages, it doesn't necessarily prevent mortgages from having high interest rate, but if there is a high interest rate on a mortgage, then there's certain safeguards that consumers will have that they don't necessarily have, or that they do have, that'll be stronger. There'll be stronger enforcement and stronger laws.
Okay, and then what's the main purpose of this act?
Well, the main purpose of the act, there's several. One is obviously we need to reestablish confidence in the United States economy. That's you and I, the viewers, and also throughout the world. It also, one of the things it wants to do is stop some of the things that were happening in the past. One is the bill provides that we're not going to be bailing out businesses that are too big to fail. We're going to prevent that from happening through legislation. We're also going to prevent the abuses that were happening in the credit card industry, the mortgage industry, and the investment industry.
So there was nothing to this point that would regulate or would talk against it, or?
Well, again, that's interesting. And what happens is when there is a crisis like this, of this magnitude, and this is obviously the worst crisis we've had since the Great Depression, there's obviously a large call for reform. So there are things in place now that protect consumers, but obviously this is perhaps an overreaction. But that happens in everything. When the system got so bad, we obviously need to fix it. So obviously there's a lot of things in here. A lot of things were thrown in here. And again, we may have to modify some of these things because even in my business, when I'm trying to do things, the law kind of contradicts, and it really is difficult for the consumer to actually find out what the best price is, say, for a mortgage, because it's really not that easy to shop because of the way the law forces mortgage brokers to act. You know.
And then I read a part where if you're denied in some way or denied credit in some way, you would be able to get a free credit report. And is that something that you've read as well?
Right.
Or?
Yes. That was in the law previously, but if you are denied credit, you can in the denial letter it will tell, and you're denied because of your credit. It'll tell in your denial letter where they got the credit information, and you can call or write or email, and they'll provide you with the credit. Also, I think you'll be able to access your credit once a year for free, so obviously you can see if there's any issues on it. There are stronger rules now for how credit card restoration companies work, and there are also stronger rules in terms of what a credit card company has to make sure that your credit is accurate.
Mm-hmm. And then the government is going to use this tool in order to prevent another crisis. I mean, how?
Yes, they're going to use.
How is that really going to happen?
They're going to use this
throw
tool.
it at them, or what?
Well, one of the things that they're going to do is they want to try to prevent companies that are too big from fail to being able to fail. I mean, and one of the ways they're going to do that is the largest banks, which are banks that are over $50 billion, there's 184 of them. What they want to do is they want to have a system that if the bank is in trouble or the bank is selling some product that they feel is risky, that they'll be able to come in, stop that bank from doing that type of business, or be able to liquidate it quicker. One of the problems we had is we had companies like Bear Stearns, we had companies like AIG that were doing things that were loopholes that have been closed now, and the bank, and we didn't have a mechanism to quickly close those things. One of the other things that the government's working on is they have now created a monitoring council, and the monitoring council will monitor the financial system, and if they feel that there's some risk, if there's something risky or there's too much risk in the marketplace, they'll be able to react quickly to it.
Mm-hmm. Now, and do you think that'll help? Because I think a lot of people, when this whole crisis started, they were really upset that the government bailed out so many banks and other organizations. Do you think it'll restore confidence in the government that next time they will be held accountable, and just like we've had to make do, they will have to as well, these big companies?
I think it will restore confidence overall. I think some of the things that you and I have talked about in the past is that things tend to go in cycles. Some of the things that have to happen, obviously, is we have to have lower unemployment. We have to have stability in the financial market, in the housing market. We have to restore confidence in the United States economy. I think that's some of the things that this bill is trying to address. And obviously, in the long term, I think it probably will.
Mm-hmm. And do you see? We've talked about this before, but do you see the current crisis ending anytime soon? Please tell me yes.
Tomorrow. well, the day of your birth of your baby.
Yeah.
that will be the miracle. I think again, I think when the financial markets and the housing markets stabilize, which we're working towards that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the problem is, you'll see in the paper today, there's something good on page 1, something good about the economy on page 1, and you turn to page 2, and it contradicts what was on page 1, or the next day you have bad news, and today we have good news in the paper. I think today we have bad news in the paper, actually. But I think when we restore some confidence in the economy, when unemployment figures go down, and we have some of the stability in the housing, the financial markets, I think things will start to look up. When you say return to normal, I don't necessarily think we're into Alice in Wonderland and we're on the other side of the looking glass. Normal may never be what we had 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, everything's changed. But I think probably sometime next year, I think all those things will start coming together, and hopefully in addition with this act, we'll start to see the economy pulling back into the, uphill rather than downhill.
Yeah. And of course, this legislation passed very recently, so we're just trying to read through it right now. But as soon as we get more information on how it actually affects, more information on how it will affect consumers, obviously we'll do another segment on that with you. Let's talk about next month. Next month we're going to talk about how to buy a foreclosure. Apparently, it's not the same.
A lighter topic. Well, when you're buying a foreclosure or short sale, I mean, one of the things is that the owner of the property, whether it's a bank or the person that lives in the property, they may not have been taking care of the property. So you obviously need to protect yourself to make sure that you have an inspection, that the property is, you know what all the flaws in the property are. You also have to be cognizant of the financing and any special clauses that the banks may have. So it's something that,
it's different.
It is different. It's a whole new area.
Okay. All right. We'll look forward to that, and that'll be in October. And thank you so much again for being here and giving us this information. It's good to know that at least our prices are going to come down a little as far as the charges, credit card charges. And still to come, expectations are very high for the Coral Gables Museum. It opens its doors next month. We'll talk to the executive director in just a bit to get an idea of what interesting things we'll find inside. Plus, find out how you can help instill a strong work ethic in children. That's the goal of a volunteer program called CPA.
When finding the nearest restaurant here in Coral Gables, you won't have to depend on your cell phone anymore or GPS tracking device. I'll tell you why coming up on City News.